Hello everybody, welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Players Championship Data Dive Show. Want to thank everybody who joined this morning over on Twitch. A lot of fun looking back at last week's disaster of wagers and DFS lineups. We scrutinized everything that I did wrong, brought in a lot of the stats or all the stats from last week, analyzed the mixed condition models, all that. But then a lot of good stuff happened as we broke down the patterns for the previous winners here at TPC Sawgrass. So I posted that research earlier today over on Twitter and Instagram. So if you want to see the summary of the research that I did earlier today over on Twitch, that is out there, including on Instagram. I gave away one price, I should say, on a player. I did not give away any of the players. There are 7 of them that qualify under all of the metrics that were put forward. But thanks to Twitter and only 140 characters, limited to that. But there are 7 players. So if you are joining tonight in chat, see if you can't list some of the players that you think might be a part of that 7. And if you are not able to catch the show live, make sure to put it in the comments who your guess is, or some of your guesses for who the 7 are. But as I was mentioning, there is a very spicy meatball, as they say, 600 to 1 that qualifies under all of the criteria put forward. So there you go. There's a little nugget for you in terms of some wagering ideas if you want to maybe throw a little bit on there and try to hit big. But we have a lot to get into, a lot of leaderboards from prior years, see if we can discern what metrics might be important this week. I know there were a lot of questions I had moving into tonight, so I am eager to get into it, so let's do it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter gambler, a much better DFS player. Go check them out. It's simply well worth your investment. They're always looking to improve, or are improving, the service. The special project that I've mentioned a few times seems to be running very, very smoothly. And on weeks like this, particularly over at DraftKings, where you have a $2.5 million guaranteed prize pool, now is the time where these are the weeks that Fantasy National really pays for itself. So I can't recommend it enough. Go to Fantasy National. It's well worth your investment. In the description of the video, there are links to all of my social media. I mentioned Twitter and Instagram. This is where I posted the research today regarding previous winners of the Players Championship. Twitter is also where I'm going to put my betting cards, or where I do put my betting cards out every week. So if you are interested in any of that, give me a follow at those 2 places. And then Twitch is where I do all of my in-depth research, as well as some other content as well, such as baseball and gaming, little of this, little of that over there. So if you're interested in more than just golf, give me a follow over at Twitch. And then finally, we're live. Chat is open. Again, do you have any guesses to who some of these 7 players are that fulfill the criteria that I posted earlier? Do you have any early leans in DFS now that the contests are out and the prices have been listed? Did you make any wagers? So jump in chat. Looking forward to a very, very fun show for what a lot of people consider the 5th major. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 Players Championship. And as I promised last night, we are going to start at the GCSA tournament fact sheet. And not a whole lot has changed here. Give me one moment as I clean off my glasses. But as you can see there, of course, the course architect didn't change. We are still on Bermuda, or what's classified as Bermuda. These greens are still 5,500 square feet, so right at average or maybe a slightly smaller. But the biggest change that I want to draw your attention to, last year's TPC Sawgrass tournament fact sheet listed the rough at 2.5 inches, and it ended up being very, very lush, very difficult to play out of. This year it's listed at 3.5, so a full inch longer. If it plays like it did last year, that is going to be very, very difficult to play out of. So perhaps a little note there to perhaps focus a lot more on accuracy for the week, especially since the rough is listed as longer. Something else that we are needing to pay attention to is that even though these are classified as Bermuda, they are overseeded with Poa trivialis. The Bermuda is completely dormant this time of year, and I am not an agronomy expert, but somebody that I respect in the industry, his name is Gabe Zelskin, I think it is, over on Twitter. If you are interested, I will put the his Twitter link in the comments, or maybe even into the description. He has a very, very good article every week regarding course information as well. And he, in his article for this week, gave a few courses that match TPC Sawgrass in terms of being labeled Bermuda but have the Poa trivialis overseed. And I'll just be going off the top of my head for those. And all the credit, again, goes to Gabe. And I will link his Twitter or link his Twitter in the description or in the comments. So all the credit goes to him. But one that stood out was the Valero Texas Open, which is the week before the Masters. There's a couple of others I'll probably have to pull up elsewhere or off to the side here. But it will be interesting to perhaps compare putting here at the Players, especially in March, since it moved to March, with some of these other tournaments. And that's what I'll be doing a lot tomorrow. So if there's enough interest, let me know in chat or in the comments, and I will do a live stream again tomorrow morning. But it'll be interesting to see the Poa trivialis overseed and how players perform on that. Otherwise, everything else is the same. We've got this champion Bermuda overseeded with rye through the fairways and the rough. The greens are still going to be fast. Still 17 holes with water in play. The biggest thing I wanted to bring to your attention is the fact that the rough is listed as a full inch longer, and that note about Poa trivialis overseeded. So instead of going to Fantasy National immediately, let's take a quick look at Windfinder. And you see Wednesday looks to be pretty hectic. If this wind pattern or whatever gets pushed later and later, it could affect a little bit of Thursday. Thursday looks to be okay. And then Friday and Saturday do look to have quite a bit of wind in the forecast. And especially if you look at Thursday, you're looking at an east to west cardinality wind, and then it's almost shifting throughout the day on Friday to where Saturday, or the end of Friday and Saturday, is the complete opposite. So essentially two different golf courses with the different winds. And now Sunday looks pretty calm, all things considered. So we will definitely update this Wednesday before the DFS Tactics show. But I wanted to give you the wind information early on in the week. So there's that. We now move to Fantasy National. And because we just came from the Wind Finder forecast, let's go ahead and throw up the moderate and windy conditions. More than likely, it looks like it's going to be moderate based on the forecast, but we'll throw in the windy just in case. So in the past 14 months, or dating back to the start of 2022, your top performers in windy conditions have been Justin Thomas, Sung Jae, Will Zalatoris, Tony Finau, Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, Keegan Bradley, Rory, Xander Schauffele, and Matt Fitzpatrick. Evening P, thanks for jumping in chat. It was good to see you this morning, and good to see you again this evening. You just missed the wind forecast, and the biggest change, at least in this year's mixed condition ball, this year's GCSA tournament fact sheet, is that the rough is listed at a full inch longer than it was last year. Now, last year we had the rain and all the wind, so the rough was very difficult to play out of, but it was still lush. It was still hard to play out of. If the rough is indeed a full inch longer this year, it's going to make probably more of a premium on accuracy off the tee. But again, thanks for jumping in chat. Hopefully you saw the results of my research that I posted today. There are 7 players that qualify under the criteria I put forward, including a very spicy meatball at 600 to 1. So if you haven't seen it, go give that a look and then see if you can't guess who some of those players might be. So there's your top players in the wind. Not sure how much that's going to be a factor yet. Again, we'll really see that Wednesday evening for the DFS Tactics show. But something that absolutely will be a factor, and it is one of the criteria that I put forward earlier today in terms of previous winners. Let's take a look at Pete Dye courses. Pete Dye designs. Generally, players that are very good at Pete Dye courses tend to play well at other Pete Dye designs. So I'll bring this out to January of 2021. A reminder for those who might not be familiar or didn't catch the show last night, the continuous Pete Dye design tournaments that are on the PGA Tour as of now: Harbour Town, which is the host of the RBC Heritage, that is the week after the Masters. You have the Stadium course, which gets played 2 of the 4 rounds at the American Express. It is the Sunday course for the American Express, so it's not a full Pete Dye Pete Dye tournament, but you can still gather some amount of information there. TPC Louisiana is the host of the Zurich Classic. The Zurich Classic was an individual event from 2016 and back. It became a team event in 2017, so if you want to see some historical data on Pete Dye designs, you can go and look at the Zurich Classic. TPC River Highlands is the Travelers every year, and then of course Sawgrass, where we are this week. He's also had some majors. Whistling Straits, most notably known, or at least most recently known, for the Ryder Cup. It also hosted the PGA back in 2015 or 16. Kiowa, the 2021 PGA, and Crooked Stick, which is actually in my home state of Indiana, hosted the BMW Championship a couple of times, but that was pretty far back. But there's a look at the courses that make up this data that we are bringing in here. And your top performers on Pete Dye courses in the past 2+ years, going back to the beginning of 2021. Those players are Shane Lowry, Corey Connors, Brian Harmon, Sung Jae, Patrick Cantley, Will Zalatoris, Jon Rahm, Keegan Bradley, Justin Thomas, and Siwoo Kim. Now, I will tell you, 9 of these 10 have very good form at the Players. And again, this just reiterates the fact that if a player plays a Pete Dye course or Pete Dye design pretty well at one place, he'll generally play other Pete Dye designs well. Majors maybe notwithstanding, since they really make those courses tough. The one player in this top 10 here that doesn't have good form at TPC Sawgrass is actually Patrick Cantlay. He has really struggled recently at the Players, and I will bring up his his player page. And if we look at the Players, he's missed the cut the last 3 times here at the Players. You see the 23rd in 2018. He has one more row. He was 22nd in 2017. But he does not have the best form here at Sawgrass, but yet has played Pete Dye Designs very well elsewhere since the start of 2021. He is the outlier in this regard. Shane Lowry's played other Pete Dye Designs well. Sung Jae, Will Zalatoris, Keegan's had very good form here. Justin Thomas has won the Players. Siwoo has won the Players. Also won at the Amex, which is the stadium course. So a lot of correlation there. So I would really, really suggest throughout this week to really look at players who have played Pete Dye Designs well. And again, that was part of the criteria I put forward on social media for the past winners. So there's a look at the top Pete Dye players. We've looked at wind. Again, nothing I'm going to do with scoring easy or difficult. Generally speaking, it plays right to average. If anything, it'll play more on the difficult side with the long rough and perhaps the possibility of wind. But there are some good scores out here too. You've got a hole that plays to a third of a shot under par, more than a quarter of a shot under par, 4/10 of a shot under par. Now you've got big numbers out here too, 3/10 over par. The Island Green, 10th over par, quarter of a shot over par. So it'll play to about average. So I don't feel comfortable putting anything in terms of easy or difficult filter scoring relative to par. And as far as course length, it's listed at 7,275 yards, I believe. If anything, it can run fairly close to 7,200. Really skirt on that boundary, if you will. But knowing that it's not consistently under 7,200, and the times that it is barely gets under 7,200, I don't feel comfortable using short courses as a filter either. So anything that we do this week probably will have the Pete Dye filter, if there is a filter. Otherwise, I've saved this until the end or when we start really going through the metrics. If I don't have any filters, I'll just go from the start of the fall. We've got, generally speaking, enough rounds here for players. Like Daniel Berger's not in the tournament. Tiger, not in the tournament, unfortunately. But everybody else here has a decent enough amount of rounds to where you can have a good idea on these players. Rory, 16. Adam Scott, 16. And then very quickly you get into the 20s, at least for the entirety of the PGA Tour season. So with that, let's take a look at a couple of things. Let's take a look at off the tee. We'll also look at approach. And instead of around the green, I think I'm going to be focusing on a couple of other things. But I think we might actually look at around the green with long rough. But first, let's take a look at your top off the tee players since the start of this PGA Tour season. Those players are Keith Mitchell, Scotty Scheffler, Hayden Buckley, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Will Zalatoris, Luke List, Johnny Vegas, Jason Day, and Gary Woodland. And you'll notice that the prices are here. I wasn't going to fight it. The prices for the DFS at DraftKings at least has been out since Sunday, early Sunday, so I wasn't going to fight it. I'll just do my best to ignore salary when looking through some of these metrics. But there's your top off the tee players. And then going to approach, you've got Tom Hoagie, Tony Finau, John Rahm, Max Homa, Ricky Fowler, Xander, Scotty Scheffler, Tom Kim, Russell Knox, and Colin Morikawa. Those are your top 10 strokes gained approach players. Lastly, only because we looked at the GCSA tournament fact sheet and that the rough was going to be listed at 3.5 inches, which is generally long. Let's take a look at strokes gained around the green in long rough. And we'll probably have to expand this out to the beginning of 2022 just to get enough rounds for everybody. But I think, yeah, there's plenty here, as you can see. So since the start of 2022, the full calendar year 2022, your top around the green players in long rough have been Matt Kuchar, again a former champion here, Siwoo Kim, former champion here, Danny Willett, Cameron Young, Billy Horschel, Kevin Kisner, JT Poston, Kevin Streelman, Tommy Fleetwood, and Jason Day, another former winner here. So there is quite a bit of correlation there among winners. I believe that's all I'm going to do in terms of a strokes gained page view. I talked about the putting and how I don't really want to look at just Bermuda because of the overseed with Poa Trivialis. And while I am thinking about that, let me bring up the other courses that have the same kind of green structure, I guess, for lack of better terms, that CPC Sawgrass has. And again, this is courtesy of Gabe. Let me see what his Gabe Ziskin, and I will put his Twitter in chat or in the description or whatnot. This is courtesy of Gabe Ziskin. He has he writes an article every week that is very, very good. Somebody I really respect in the industry. The other courses, this week we're looking for Poa Trivialis specialists. The other courses on tour with this type of surface are TPC Scottsdale, which is the waste management, PGA West, which is the stadium course. The other American Express courses have it too, but we don't get statistics for them. So we're looking at the waste management. We're looking at American Express, Innisbrook, where we'll be next month for the Valspar, and TPC San Antonio, which is the host of the Valero Texas Open. So hopefully some of those names will stick with me. The American Express, Waste Management, Valspar, and Valero. I said it once, I'll forget it already, but we'll take a look at perhaps some putting from those places, and I'll definitely be doing that tomorrow. If you're interested, put it in chat or put it in the comments if you want me to be live and share that with you all over on Twitch in the morning. Otherwise, let's go ahead and start looking at some leaderboards and see if we can't figure out what in the world is going to matter this week for the Players' Championship. And we look at last year's. Last year's might be a bit misleading because of all of the wind that they had. But still, you had a lot of around the green, a lot of putting, especially from Cam Smith. Let's see, if we sort this, decent. Your winner was nowhere near. He was very, very poor off the tee. He just made it all up in irons and putting. So off the tee, at least for the winner, didn't. But you do have some correlation here. You don't have any miscuts in your screen. You have to come down to, let's see, last line you see is Harold Varner, so 3 more places is a miscut. Approach, yeah, solid. Now you do have one miscut that does rise, but you know, your top 5 in strokes gained approach all finished inside the top 15. Your winners in here, even after the miscut, you have top 15, runner up, top 10, more top 15s is pretty strong there. Around the green, not too much. Got a lot of miscuts around in here. with a lot of double-digit finishes, but putting fairly solid. You have Chesson Hadley, who was a clunker of a made cut. He seemingly made every putt but didn't do anything else last year. But otherwise, okay. Don't know how much we're going to glean from that, especially since we looked at Microsoft Excel last night. We saw that approach. I'm thinking off the tee probably might be a little bit more important with the emphasis on the long rough. Probably might be looking at some more fairways. So let's actually go into that tab in Fantasy National. Let's go to fairways and greens, driving, approaches, and all that stuff. And again, with a typical Pete Dye course, distance not really a factor. He has a lot of holes that he designs positionally, club down, etc. So distance not a big thing. Fairways, Cameron Smith didn't hit seemingly very many fairways at all last year. If we sort, you have a miscut from Martin Laird. Otherwise, you got some decent run of cut making. Okay, not the best, not the worst. About the same for good drives. About the same. Greens. Okay. So the greens, you have a whole lot of cut makers. And you do have some very high finishes in here. Quite a few of your top 10s right here. Your first miscut, as you can see, you have to scroll pretty far down. So greens were a decent factor last year. 2021. We probably only will do 2 years tonight, 2022 and 2021, since 2020 was not played for reasons. Let's see. Fairways wasn't too big in 2021. Good drives. Not really. Maybe a little bit more than fairways, but not by much. And then greens. You at least have more upper end finishes. Now you do have your fair share of missed cuts in here as well, but you have a whole lot more upper end finishes. So I'm thinking it's going to be the greens that we're going to want to look at for the players this week. And that would make some sense, as when we looked at the course breakdown in Fantasy National last night, the green and regulation percentage here is 63% versus a little over or pretty close to 66% at the average tour event. So greens are a little bit harder to hit here. So that would seem to make some sense. So we'll move to the fairways and greens tab, and your top greens in regulation gained players. Again, just checking for no filters. Your top greens gained players since the start of this PGA Tour season: Scotty Scheffler, John Rahm, Will Gordon, Jason Day, Tony Finau, Emiliano Grillo, Colin Morikawa, Luke List, Aaron Wright, and Hayden Buckley. Let's just check Pete Dye. Might as well. So we will have to expand the timeline, obviously. We'll go to the beginning of 2021. But your top greens in regulation gained players on Pete Dye courses: Matthew Neesmith, John Rahm, Colin Morikawa, Corey Connors, Doug Ghim, Shane Lowry, Keegan Bradley, Russell Knox, Patrick Cantley, and Siwoo Kim. So a whole lot of overlap here, more than likely with the strokes gained total. But you do have some difference here. I know Connors. I don't think Connors was top 10 in terms of total on Pete Dye. Maybe he was. I know Rahm was. Morikawa, I don't know. I don't think was. I know Shane Lowry was number 1. I know Keegan Bradley was highly up there. Cantley and Kim were up there. Okay. Probably not going to use Pete Dye filter too much. That's what the strokes gained total will be for, and why I have shown it to you consistently throughout the week. But again, there's your top greens and regulation gained players since the start of this PGA Tour season. I don't see much else. Oh, I take that back. Scrambling. We absolutely want to look at some scrambling gained. And again, with nothing to do with easy or difficult, we can look at scrambling with long rough, scrambling on Pete Dye. But since the start of the PGA Tour season, your top scramblers have been Aaron Wise, Jason Day, Andrew Putnam, Maverick McNeely, Mackenzie Hughes, Hideki, Max Homa, Aaron Baddeley, S.H. Kim, and Matt Kuchar. Okay. I'll just go ahead and go all the way back to 2021. For what it's worth, we'll take a look at your top scramblers on Pete Dye courses. See how much this changes. Mackenzie Hughes is now number 1. JT Poston, Brian Harmon, Justin Thomas, Andrew Putnam, Chesson Hadley, Denny McCarthy, Christian Bezadenhout, Kevin Kisner, Sung Jae, and Gary Woodland. So there's your top scramblers on Pete Dye courses. Last thing I want to do, and this is probably where I'll go in the mixed condition model, is scrambling in long rough. And the reason why we're looking at scrambling, the reason why we're looking at long rough, again, from the GCSAA tournament fact sheet, it is listed, the rough is listed as a full inch longer this year as opposed to last year, and it was difficult to play out of last year. And as far as scrambling, players are not as successful scrambling here as they are at the average tour event. Little under 54% at TPC Sawgrass versus 57.5% at the average tour event. So your top scramblers in long rough have been Matt Fitzpatrick, Denny McCarthy, Matt Kuchar, Lucas Herbert, Shane Lowry, Cameron Young, JT Poston, Mackenzie Hughes, Billy Horschel, and Brendan Todd. So quite a bit of overlapping here, but that's the first time we've said Matt Fitzpatrick tonight. I think it might be the first time we've said Brendan Todd tonight. But JT Poston's been up here a lot lately, or on some of these filters. Shane Lowry's been up here on these filters. Matt Kuchar has been up here. Mackenzie Hughes has been up here for a lot of the short game and scrambling and around the green type stuff. So, all right, there's a look at fairways and greens and what I am going to be using this week for my mixed condition model. I'm just resetting the timeline here. Let's take a look at scoring. So we'll go back to 2022 and look at birdies and bogeys. So birdies and bogeys gained. Your winner last year was an emphatic birdies gained. But then you had a pretty decent little run. Well, I was going to say decent little run. The next two were bogeys, avoided mainly. 2 birdies, bogeys. Again, fairly balanced if we sort. So your winner led in birdies gained. And pretty strong correlation there. Bogeys, pretty strong, but you do have a miscut that rises fairly high, and you have a lot more double-digit numbers, I felt like. Yeah. So probably an edge to birdies gained from last year. Take a look at 2021. And let's see. Birdies, again, the winner was more birdies. Birdies there. Birdies there. Fairly balanced throughout, the kind of the top 10. A whole lot of correlation at the extreme top. Then you do have a miscut. Bogeys. I mean, shoot, you have another miscut, but you do have a lot more solid performance before that missed cut. Again, still probably birdies gained. Probably. Yeah, if you look at... Yeah, let's just take a look at the top 16 here. Every single player in the top 16 was positive in terms of birdies gained. God, stay highlighted. Every single player was top 16, or every player in the top 16 was positive in birdies gained in 2021. You did have a couple negative in bogeys avoided. I'm going to come back to 2022 just to take a look because I don't think we did that. This is the top 19. Yeah, only one player negative in terms of birdies gained, and it was really darn close to field average, versus you had quite a few in the bogeys avoided. So 2 straight years there of bogey, or 2 straight years of birdies. So we move to this year's field, and your top birdies gained players since the start of the PGA Tour season: Jon Rahm, Max Homa, Tony Finau, Cameron Young, Taylor Montgomery, Jason Day, Patrick Cantlay, Justin Thomas, Scotty Scheffler, and Ricky Fowler. All 10 of those players are in the top 11. The one player that is top 10 in birdies or better gained that isn't in just the birdies alone is Victor Hovland, but he's 13th in birdies. I don't know. I think birdies or better might be a worthwhile look. Like Lahiri had a huge amount of eagles. Henley. But really, it just doesn't seem like a lot of eagles at TPC Sawgrass. But if we look at the breakdown, you've got a 2%er. That's decent. 3.5 is a good one. Almost a 2%. Okay. Yeah, I think probably it'd be best for birdies or better. So I'll sort on the birdies or better for you. So again, that top 10, the birdies or better gained since the start of the PGA Tour season: Jon Rahm, Max Homa, Tony Finau, Taylor Montgomery, Justin Thomas, Jason Day, Patrick Cantlay, Victor Hovland, Scotty Scheffler, and Cameron Young. So 9 of the 10 are the same from the birdies or better versus the birdies. Something I do want to look at, though, is opportunities. So your top opportunities gained players that are also converting, as in birdies or better. So you got Jon Rahm, Tony Finau, Cameron Young's the number 1 opportunities gained player. Okay, Tom Hoge, very high up there. Kurt Kitayama, Rory. Okay. Don't think I'll do anything with opportunities, but it's at least a worthy look. Let's take a look at birdies or better on Pete Dye courses. Move the timeline. Your top birdies or better gained players on Pete Dye courses since the start of 2021 have been Patrick Cantlay, Tony Finau, Shane Lowry, Siwoo Kim, Cameron Davis, Tyrrell Hatton, Matt Fitzpatrick, Brian Harmon, Max Homa, and Harris English. So again, a pretty heavy overlap in terms of strokes gained total and birdies or better gained. But Cameron Davis is now up here. That's the first time we've said him. There's Shane Lowry. He was number 1. We talked about Cantlay, Finau, Siwoo. I think Hatton was up there for the top 10 in terms of strokes gained total on Pete Dye courses. Okay. But not a lot that I'm going to do with filters in terms of the birdies or better gained. I'm probably just going to be looking at birdies or better gained since the start of the PGA Tour season. And then go from there. Maybe even since the start of this calendar year. I haven't ruled that out yet either. Okay, let's move to proximity. We had a lot of questions, or at least I had a lot of questions last night to see what length, if any, proximity was going to matter. From last year, the top 19, boy, total prox isn't all that red, to be honest with you. Doug Gim is very, very close to field average. Now, Keith Mitchell, Max Homa, Daniel Berger, they were pretty poor. But if we sort on this, now you had Adam Scott was a miscut, Martin Laird was a miscut, but around them, you had a lot of good finishes. I mean, there's your winner, probably 12th to 14th. Top 15 in Eric Van Rooyen. 2 middling finishes in Sebastian Munoz and Justin Thomas. A top 5, a top 10. Total prox looks like it could be something, or at least it was last year. Trying to think back from last night. 200 plus was kind of interesting. We'll just kind of go through each of these. 75 to 100. Cameron Smith was very good from it, but not much else. Okay, Cameron Smith was your winner or your leader in 100 to 125. Let's kind of take a look at the pro shot distribution. Okay, so about 1.2% more here than the average tour event. Okay, the biggest discrepancy looks like it was the 125 to 150. So let's see what that looks like. Not great. Not great. A lot of good finishes and a lot of miscuts. Not particularly strong. 200 plus is pretty strong. You got clunkers from Nick Watney and Michael Thompson, sure. You got a top 10, top 5, top 10, top 10. Okay. But your winner led in 100 to 125 for what it's worth. Let's take a look at 2021. See if total prox might be something. Again, if it is, could be onto something. A lot more red. This is, actually, let's come down to Cam Smith. This is the top 20. Just convenient for ties. A lot more red in the total prox. 150 to 175 was pretty solid. Justin Thomas was still high in total prox, your winner. And you had some decent performances, not as correlating as last year's, but okay, 75 to 100 was strong 2 years ago. A whole lot less. Decent run of cup makers, I suppose. Nothing really here. Lots of miscuts up top. Oh, God, nothing there. This one's strong. You got the miscut from Webb, the clunker from Nate Lashley, but other than that, the 200 plus was pretty strong in 2021. Again, I say it seemingly every week, but I mean, just proximity is just my weakest analysis point in golf analytics. I'm looking at total prox. Put it in chat. Put it in the comments what you think it's going to be. I could see an argument for a couple of different things, I suppose. We saw the 200 plus. I mean, 100 to 125 last year was pretty strong. But I'm just going to look at total prox. Your top proximity players since the start of the PGA Tour season, going back to the Fortinet in the fall. Tom Hoagie, John Rahm, Gary Woodland, Justin Suh, Russell Knox, Nate Lashley, Tony Finau, Scott Piercy, Max Homa, and Davis Riley. If we want to look at perhaps a couple of these ranges that might have stood out, the top 4 here, Tom Hoagie, Rahm, Woodland, and Suh, they're all top 10 and 200 plus. 100 to 125, you got Tom Hoagie, you got Russell Knox, Colin Morikawa's up here. Up here a little bit. Don't really know of anything else that really stood out. Let's move to par 3s. And last year, we had 4 players that were negative in par 3s. You had the whole gambit of range. Par 3s. Yeah, decent. Cameron Smith was very good at them. Let's see. You have 1 that measures here on the scorecard, 2, and then 1. So you got a 3.9. Okay. That's just the Island Green 17th. 1.9. What was this? 3.9. 3.9, 1.9, and no correlation. Look at all those miscuts there. 2.3. Okay, maybe a little bit of something there. 2.2. That's pretty strong minus Andrew Putnam. My goodness, look at that. We'll come down to Berger here. Yes, you have a couple of clunkers from Wise and Garnett and Hickok, but you also got a lot of premier finishes up here too. Your winner, top 10, top 15, top 15, top 10. Hey, Joey. Thanks for jumping in chat. Glad to see you. How has your week been? Are you ready for the Players' Championship? Made your wagers yet? Looking at anybody in particular for DFS? Thanks for jumping into chat. And then 225 plus. You got a good run of cut making here, but only a 1.2 in terms of strokes gained total. So, not terribly convinced that 225 plus is where we want to go, but you did have cut makers. Let's cover 2021 real quick. This is the top 20. Again, it doesn't look like a whole lot of success, especially since your winner was negative, but boy, that's some good stuff there. Then you get these 2 missed cuts, and you got some more good finishes. So, okay, maybe a little bit. Got a 3.9, 3.7, a 1.3, 2.4. Again, the 225 plus, you got your cut makers. Oh, well, that's why. Stupid. Anybody that missed the cut didn't play a 225 plus. Nick's a dumbass. Looks like it's just total par 3s. And it doesn't look like a whole lot of emphasis in it. So your top par 3 performers since the start of the PGA Tour season. John Rahm, Max Homa, Chesson Hadley, Matthew Neesmith, Tom Kim, Justin Suh, Ricky Fowler, Adam Hadwin, Grayson Sigg, and Nick Hardy. I tell you what, Justin Suh's been up there now a little bit. Chesson Hadley's been up there. Matthew Neesmith's been up there. Getting some pretty interesting names who are rising in these top 10s in these rankings for these various metrics. Interesting. Very interesting. Let's cover the 4s and the 5s very, very quickly. We have a lot to look at in Microsoft Excel as well. All right. Par 4s. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look at all that. I mean, my goodness. Nothing worse than a T33 from your top, 20 to 25 players. Is there a specific range? That's only 1.8, 4.9, and your winner, 7.2. And decent correlation, but your winner wasn't up here. 5.6. And a good run of cut making. Okay. Probably between these two. Maybe even the 354 just because your winner was there. 2021. Par 4s. Oh, yeah. So, still more. Now, you do have some, 41sts now, but if we stop at just Bezadenut, the players that were 5.8 or more, my goodness. 22nd is the highest, and then you get 35th and 41st. Par 4s are going to be something. A 2.2. 4.7, but your winner was second. 6.3. This has been the highest actual number. Decent correlation. not the strongest, but decent, 6.7. Oh, that's pretty interesting. We'll see what Microsoft Excel says. I'm going to look at the shorter par 4s, particularly the 350 to 4, because your winners were up there very high both years. So your top strokes gained par 4 players since the start of the PGA Tour season: Scotty Scheffler, Jason Day, Max Homa, Taylor Montgomery, Patrick Cantlay, Mav McNeely, Thomas Detry, Xander, Ben Griffin, and Chris Kirk. Looking at the shorter par 4s, you have, I'll give Scotty Scheffler an honorable mention, 11th and 21st. Max Homa, top 20 in both. Thomas Detry's top 10 in both. Chris Kirk's top 25 in both. Rahm, 30th and 1st. Aaron Baddeley, top 25 in both. So there's a few names to look at for par 4s. Lastly, look at par 5s. We've got 2 each from 500 to 550, 550 to 6. Not a whole lot of correlation, or not as much as I would have thought. Yeah, the 5.2 and a 4.2. This one looks more correlating up here. Okay. And then 2021's par 5s. Okay, so Thomas led in par 5. So 2022 probably was just an outlier just because of the wind that they had last year. And he did it all in the 500 to 550. That's some good correlation. Not as much here. Interesting. We'll see what Microsoft Excel says. But your top par 5 performers since the start of the PGA Tour season: Rahm, Garrick Higo, first time I think we've said him tonight, Sungjae, Patrick Cantlay, Rory, JT, Colin Morikawa, Tony Finau, Wyndham Clark, and Taylor Montgomery. All right, running a little bit over. I've been talking a lot. Let's take a look at some specifics around the players and the numbers. I'm just going to be focusing on ball striking. Yes, this is a pretty high outlier, but again, with the rough being so, or listed as an inch higher, I'm going to have an emphasis on players that are accurate. Distance isn't going to be much of a factor. I think I'm going to be looking at greens. So approach is a fairly high number. There we go. Yeah, off the tee is actually 24%. Approach is 10%. Yeah. I think fairways are going to be a little bit more important than what it normally plays to, and that's a very low outlier. Yeah, okay. So becomes 13.5% more important when you remove the outlier. So fairways probably something to look at. Greens is absolutely something we want to look at. It was interesting to see the birdies and bogeys. Now the birdies have been the much more consistent metric year over year here at TPC Sawgrass. Now it's saying that the bogeys are slightly more important, but we saw that at least in the past 2 years, the birdies have been more, and it's been more consistent. So perhaps it is birdies are better gained. Looking at par 3s, nothing really stands out. It just looks like it's total par 3s. Par 4s, the actual highest numbers in the 450 to 5s, but we saw, okay, so you saw how the 350 to 4 was pretty exaggerated last year. So perhaps it's the 400 to 450 again, because that's a pretty consistent metric year over year. But again, nothing is even a third of the total of par 4. So it looks like it's just par 4s in general. And then par 5s, we have a big outlier here. Otherwise, it's been the 500 to 550. Okay. Lastly, procs. Like total procs was a big deal last year, but it isn't usually. So I'm thinking this is not only is it a high outlier because of the conditions. Perhaps total procs isn't the way we want to go. Now that's a very, very low outlier for 200 plus. And it's just going to get even higher. Shucks, doesn't look like you can see that. Oh, damn it! I am sorry. I've had it on the Fantasy National view. My apologies. So there's the 200 plus, and that outlier there. I'll try to run through this very quickly again. There's the high outlier for procs. Par 5s, there's a big outlier. 500, 550 has been pretty consistent. Par 4s, none of these numbers are equaling even a third of the total of strokes gained par 4. So, looks like it's just strokes gained par 4. Same for strokes gained par 3. Birdies has been very, very consistent metric year over year. Here at TBC Sawgrass, I mentioned the fairways. That's a very, very low outlier. It's negative. Distance doesn't matter. Greens has been very good and it has a low outlier. So there's a few of the metrics that I'm going to be focusing on. Before we go to the early look and see who's been best at what, let's take a look quickly at my mixed condition model from last year. Now, the winner was 5th in my mixed condition model, so that's good. That's good. Let's see, I had one. Even though he withdrew, he withdrew because he wasn't in contention or going to make the cut. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in my top 20 missed the cut. Normally that's pretty bad, but again, with the just hectic wind, I guess it's kind of acceptable. Like I said, and I had the winner up here. Probably a little bit biased, but I want to say this is a very average or very middling mixed condition model. I had 15% in strokes gained approach. Seems reasonable. Now I had 15% in the 450 to 5s, and it looks like I'm focusing on the shorter par 4s this year. That could be a difference. Par 5s. I had 10%. Seems reasonable. Now, there's 10% I'm getting back. I'm not going to do anything in terms of strokes gained total, but Pete Dye. I did factor in Pete Dye courses. That is a pretty big factor. 10% off the tee. I'd like to thank the Live Tour for taking Kevin Na. Yeah. For as much as Kevin Na was not an exciting name, he won. And he won more often than you think he would. I think he had something like 3 or 4, even 5 straight years where he had a win. It was just random. He would just pop and win. 10% in Bermuda, Fast and Lightning. That is going to change. And if you missed the intro, I gave credit to Gabe and saying which courses TBC Sawgrass is actually going to mirror because the Bermuda is dormant. So this is 10% I'm definitely getting back, or at least changing the filter as best as I can. But I'm probably not going to do much with putting, to be honest. So there's 20% that I'm getting back in those two. I did do birdies or better, and I did it on Pete Dye. That seems reasonable. Good drives. There's 5% more. I did put into the windy because of the forecast from last year. And lastly, I had 3-putt avoidance. Actually makes some sense. Okay, so in terms of predictive analytics, these numbers are going to be a little bit higher than normal because of the full 156 that the players brings to start the tournament. Having said that, these are still some pretty high numbers. Approach was the best. Makes some sense. Good drives gained was second best. Okay. Again, emphasis on ball striking off the tee was okay. Windy was not very predictive. Pete Dye wasn't all that predictive. 3-putt avoidance was fairly okay. But nothing really stood out predictive-wise for the players that finished in the top 25. So again, these numbers are the average ranking of the players that finish in the top 25 if I were to sort column A here. So, okay. I've got some percent I can move around, but I am looking at a lot of the same metrics. So, last thing for this evening, let's take a look at the performance of these players, specifically at Sawgrass, going back the last 4 years. And I'm saying 4 years because 2020 was canceled. So I'm only going back to 2019. 2018. So 2022, 2021, 19, and 18. Let's sort some metrics here. See who's been the best at some particular things. Let's see who's the best strokes gained approach player here. Because I think I want to focus on either fairways or good drives for driving. So your top strokes gained approach players, Keegan Bradley, you see the success he's had here. Doug Ghim is actually 2 for 2 with an average finish of a top 20. Fratelli's been good here. Victor, Nick Taylor, Corey Connors has been very successful here. Lozal Torres, Matt Kuchar, his win was a long time ago, but he is a former Players Champion. Almati, Damon, there's JT. Tommy Fleetwood's had a lot of success here. Scott, Rahm. Okay. I do want to look at putting. Who has been very good putting here? So, strokes gained putting. Your top putters in the past 4 years or 4 tournaments at the Players. Robbie Shelton, it's just 1 year, but he gained a lot on the greens. Chesson Hadley. Billy Horschel, makes a lot of sense. It's technically Bermuda. Webb. Denny McCarthy. 3 for 3. Not a lot of inspiring, or not a very high average finish, but 3 for 3. Seamus Power, 2 for 2. Adam Hadwin. Poston, who popped on a lot of metrics. Vegas. English hasn't played well here at all. Shane Lowry, the number 1 Pete Dye performer. Boy, look at Terrell Hatton. He has not played well here. All right, so there's your top putters. I'm going to go to greens. I know I'm going to look at some greens in regulation this week, and we'll scan across for good drives. So your top greens in regulation gain players. Doug Ghim. There's John Rahm, Lozal Torres, Corey Connors, Victor, Seamus Power, Cage Lee's 2 for 2, Dylan Fratelli 2 for 2, Nick Taylor 3 for 3. Tommy Fleetwood's had a lot of success here. There's Keegan. If we scroll across and look for some good drives, trying to find some players who have played it more than once. So again, John Rahm, Willie Z. There's Corey Connors. Corey Connors has been very, very good at hitting fairways or hitting greens. Probably both. Victor's been pretty good. Coming on down, Fitzpatrick, Keegan, Doug Ghim popping lots of Pete Dye and Pete Dye knockoffs around these parts. Okay, well that's good information. I not from your area, so interesting. It makes some sense. Tons of Pete Dye where Shank's from in Indiana. That is true. Let's see. But Shank is been really bad specifically at Sawgrass. Maybe he's played other Pete Dye courses well, but at Sawgrass, he's been pretty bad. But Doug Ghim has been pretty good here. And former course history can matter, at least for winners. That's part of the research that I posted out today. I'm going to skip birdies. Probably going to skip par 3s. Let's take a look at par 4s and maybe par 5s. But par 4s were very, very interesting, or very, very important. God dang it. Doug Ghim, Max Homa, JT, Keegan, Justin Rose. All these players have a lot of success here at Sawgrass. JT Poston. Now, Hideki has not had a lot of success here. Zalatoris, Ryan Moore, 3 for 3 at the Players. Adam Long's 3 for 3. Tommy Fleetwood, Fitzpatrick, Fratelli, Brian Harmon, J-Day, former champion, Adam Scott, Knox. Okay. Last thing, I am going to look at total procs. I am getting a sense that total procs might have a little bit to do with it. Not a lot, but I don't see a most important range or proximity, individual proximity. So that leads me to think that it would be total procs. I might not put total procs in my mixed condition model, but I still like to look. Let's see. Malnati, Keegan, Nick Taylor, Victor Hovland, Scott. Somebody else that has had some terrible form is Xander at Sawgrass. So be aware of that. He has had some terrible form at Sawgrass the past 4 years. Corey Connors. Boy, Justin Hadley's popped a lot. Justin Thomas. Ryan Moore again. Lee. Doug Kim. All right, so there's a look at the metrics that we kind of focused on tonight and where some of these various players or how these players have performed in those specific metrics the past few years here at TPC Sawgrass. I will bring you back to a sorted average finish look. That's going to do it for the Data Dive show this evening. Again, in the comments, or if you want to put it on social media, take a guess at who you think the 7 players are that qualify under all of the criteria that I put forward. There's one player that earlier today, 600 to 1 to win, that qualified under all of the criteria that I put forward. So it wouldn't be calls if I didn't put a wager on a 600 to 1 shot. So definitely put that up. But there's 6 others as well that qualify under those metrics. And then in the comments as well, or reach out on social media if you want to see, if you want me to be live when I do the putting metrics tomorrow on Twitch, or at least do my investigation based on the TPC Sawgrass putting versus the other courses that match in terms of a POA Trivialis overseed. If you want to see that, make sure you put it in the comments or reach out to me on social media. But yeah, 600 to 1. It was, I kept scrolling and where is this guy? Where is this guy? Oh, okay. Well, that just on merit bet. So, I mean, I just threw that, however much money down the shitter, but that's something I'd bet $2 on and hit and then be looking for the nearest bridge. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that, but I get the sentiment. Again, there is a reason that player is 600 to 1. I mean, he is, he's not a big name, but he does qualify under all of the criteria that I put forward. So it was interesting to see. So that's going to do it for the Data Dive show tonight. Thanks to everybody who tuned in, Pete and Joey for jumping in chat. Always appreciate it. Lots of fun. Thanks to everybody else out there who tunes in, watches and listens, supports the channel. Love what I do. Wouldn't be able to do it without you all, and trying to win some money while taking a pretty data-intensive look at golf. So thanks again for all of the wagers that you've made so far this week for the Players' Championship, for all of the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Players' Championship. Until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.